I almost think it's like a calling. Why do people want to be doctors? Why do people want to work with sick people, or lawyers want to help people legally? It's like it's just a compelling thing to want to take care of an animal and nurture them.
During the summer, Big Bear has so many cool things to do, both around the lake and in nearby cities. One of the best family-friendly spots is the Big Bear Alpine Zoo. The really neat thing about this zoo is it's not just a zoo, but a rehabilitation area for the animals. It's not just a traditional come and look at the critter zoo. Oh no.
We're one of 2 alpine zoos in the United States, by the way.
Big Bear Alpine Zoo opened in 1959 after a devastating wildfire tore through the San Bernardino National Forest. Initially, it was not a zoo, but a safe place for injured animals to rehabilitate and get a second chance back in the wild. For many of these animals, returning to the wild is not an option, as they've been imprinted by their human caretakers or were too injured to take care of themselves.
What don't I like about this zoo? It's small, so it's much more intimate. We have a really great collection of animals here, a lot of indigenous animals, for the exception of our snow leopards and a couple of other little rescues. I just like that it's a little more personal.
It is one of only 2 alpine zoos in the United States.
And we are one of only 2 zoos in the country that is located at an alpine elevation.
We're also the largest zoo in the county and the most populated zoo in the county, so we're pretty happy about that.
90% of the animals brought to the zoo for rehabilitation are successfully released back into their native environment.
The wow factor is still not lost on me every single day. I get to work with snow leopards. How cool is that? And they pay me to do that. I would do it for free. Just, don't tell my boss that.
We're also unique because we provide rehabilitation resources for the county. So when an injured, sick, or orphaned animal comes to the zoo, our goal is to get them better and get them back out into nature without being imprinted and completely independent.
In 1959, a forest fire engulfed the San Bernardino National Forest, injuring many animals that required care. A makeshift hospital rehabilitation facility was set up on land where the zoo currently resides. An orphaned 30-pound baby black bear and 2 bobcats were the first residents of the future zoo. Of course, being an alpine zoo so high up does have its challenges.
But the challenges up here are obviously the weather, and I've never had to shovel so much snow in my life.
You find something you love to do, it doesn't feel like work, even though it is a ton of work just to get through your day here. But it's a dream come true. It's a dream job. I love the people I work with. I love the animals I work with. Even on the hardest day here where you can't feel your fingers because it's so cold, or you've fallen and you've hurt yourself, or just any number of things.
Zoos haven't always had the best reputation. Many say that animals are not meant to live in cages or behind bars. They say the same misery and despair that humans feel when they're locked up in prisons and in jail cells are felt by the millions of animals around the world that are caged in zoos. The only difference is that these animals have done no wrong and have committed no crimes.
A lot of people, they have a negative view of zoos, and I did too at one point, because there was a time in this country where zoos were not very nice places.
In the wild, animals like lions, wolves, or polar bears would roam hundreds, if not thousands of miles in search of food or a mate. The territories of some of our most loved apex predators are so vast that it is impossible for any kind of zoo or safari park to even come close to replicating it, especially when the focus is on profit and public entertainment.
But with That older generation dying and new generations coming up and being a little more educated, understanding the role of conservation that zoos play, really changed the culture of zoos.
There's definitely some sentiment in people's minds that animals in captivity in a zoo environment is a bad thing. However, zoos like the Big Bear Alpine Zoo are fighting to change those perceptions.
They're no longer these entertainment areas. They're actually almost like just a scientific thing and a good home for animals that are ambassadors for their cousins out in the wild.
I mean, yeah, they exhibit animals and they make money off of doing that, but there's a whole host of other things that, a lot of people don't realize. The conservation efforts, the outreach, the education, the conservation efforts that animals are making. Look at the California condor. What was there, like 30 or 40 individuals 20 years ago? And through all the efforts at the San Diego Zoo, there's like 500 or so now. So, I mean, they were on the brink of, extinction. Zoos do a lot of work to trying to remedy those situations.
There is not a soul that works for the Big Bear Alpine Zoo that wants to see an animal in a bad condition. Anyone who believes that animals shouldn't be in zoos or that zoos shouldn't exist should come see for themselves.
There's a lot of people who would never know anything about wild animals unless they saw them and were educated about them. So we're educators as well.
The zoo started in 1959 with a black bear and 2 bobcats. There was a local fire and some animals were injured, and so they were brought to this location and makeshift cages were built in order to take care of them. Over time, the zoo grew and the county took over through Parks and Recreation, officially in 1960. And the zoo has, during that period, focused on providing an opportunity for guests to see animals up close, and also the opportunity to rescue and rehabilitate injured, sick, or orphaned wildlife.
A neighbor of mine told me that there was some little tiny zoo across from Bear Mountain. I was like, really? I've been coming up to Big Bear for years, and I never knew there was a zoo up here. At that point in my life, I think I was not the hugest fan of zoos, to be completely transparent. I think the last time I left the LA Zoo, I left pretty depressed. Just got a different feeling here. I think I connected right off the bat with this American badger named Lotus, who I walked up to her enclosure. She immediately came up to the fence, crawled the fence, showed me her belly, and I felt that sort of instant connection. When you work with animals, at some point you're gonna get that, sort of aha moment where you're like, oh my God, I feel this sort of connection to her. I walked around the zoo for about an hour and a half maybe, came back into the front office, right off the bat talked to the cashier and said, are you guys hiring?
I found out when I got here that the zoo was really behind the times in a lot of different areas. And so we had to go back to basics in terms of animal welfare, nutrition, record keeping, diets, guest engagement, all of the major things that you can think of when it comes to how a zoo runs.
We're constantly, weighing our animals. We get weights on our animals pretty routinely and constantly tweaking their diets based on, weight gain or weight loss or what type of season it is or what their body conditioning score looks like. Probably six of the animals I work with are currently on some form of diet. It's a great job. I don't think a lot of people can do it well. I happen to really take to it really, really well, but you have to be physically strong. You have to be emotionally strong. We lose animals on occasion. Animals pass away, and it's devastating. We bond with these animals. I'm with these animals more than I am with my pets. So when you lose an animal, you grieve for a few minutes or more, but then you got to go on about your day because I have 25 other animals that are counting on me to bring my A game,
While the Big Bear Alpine Zoo is certainly awesome, it's not appropriate for every kind of animal.
Not advised to have a warm weather animal. They're not going to do well up here. So we're not going to take a tropical animal up here, like say a tiger or something. Although there are some tigers that live in cold weather, but you're not going to have like a born-in tiger here. You might have a Siberian or Amur tiger up here. But again, you have larger zoos that have better facilities to accommodate an animal like that. So we take mostly indigenous animals or animals that survive in a similar environment.
The Big Bear Alpine Zoo is known especially for its animal enrichment activities.
I'd say probably the most rewarding part of our job is providing enrichment to our animals and having our animals that we care for on a daily basis interact with some of those activities. So every day, every single animal on exhibit gets some type of what's called a daily enrichment activity, and these activities are provided to them to elicit their natural behaviors. It's through no fault of their own that really any of them are here, but we still want them to be the best, snow leopard, barn owl, black bear, wolf that they can be.
So every day these animals get some sort of activity, and we provide them with these activities. Unfortunately, when this litter was born, they were born with a genetic defect affecting their vision, termed multiple coloboma, whereby each one of their right eyes really only grew to the size of a pea, so very, very tiny. And so today I did a variety of things for them. Number one, I took part of their diet and I scattered it all around. I hid some right up here in front of the viewing window. I scattered some up on their perching, up on their roof of their building that they have in here, to really get them to work for it and to move around. They're gonna have to use their sense of vision to locate these pieces of meat. They can still see out of their left eye. They're gonna have to use their highly developed sense of smell to locate these pieces of meat as well. So that was one activity that I provided to them. A second activity I provided to them was that I brought or offer them each a cardboard box. I learned very early on that if I'm gonna bring something in here, I gotta bring one for each cat, or else they could potentially get aggressive over that. So I offered them 2 boxes. In each box was a piece of meat. So again, with the boxes, they're gonna have to locate those boxes by using vision. They're gonna have to use their sense of smell to know that there's something in those boxes they might want to eat. And then maybe some problem solving abilities. How do I get what's in that box? How do I get what's in that box before my sister gets what's in that box?
Yeah, that's a challenge that every keeper in a zoo has. We need to keep our animals stimulated mentally, physically, sometimes emotionally, so that they don't get bored.
Of course, the zoo wasn't always like this.
A lot of our exhibits were barren or had articles in the exhibit that we normally wouldn't see in the wild, like spools or igloos or different things like that. And so we incorporated natural materials, and I had quizzed my staff to really study and understand natural behaviors of animals so that we could apply those to the basic elements of exhibit design. How do you encourage natural behaviors if you don't know what those natural behaviors are? So once we had a really good understanding of these natural behaviors, we were then able to modify a lot of the exhibits to improve climbing structures, shade. We provided choice and control, which is a basic element of animal welfare. Does an animal have a choice to be in the sun or in the shade? In the heat or in the cold? In the rain or in the shelter? Choice and control is a basic element of animal welfare.
When you think about their behaviors, each species has a unique behavior, and that's why it's so important to learn their behaviors and their needs, because what works for one animal isn't going to work for another animal. It's almost like a child. When you buy a child an expensive toy and all they want to play with is the box. And you find that a lot with a lot of these animals. It's like the simplest things will keep them occupied for hours. Sometimes you can't overthink it, because in the wild they don't have Legos.
In the wild, animals must often fight to survive. This behavior is completely absent in zoos.
Here at the zoo, they're protected, so they don't have to worry about those things. So we have to kind of divorce ourselves from the thought of, well, let's give them something that's going to be fun. And fun is an abstract idea to an animal. It's not so much fun. You want them to engage and burn off that energy that they have that they would otherwise be burning in the wild. It's part of the fun of the job is to come up with new innovative things for them to do and figure out.
When I first got here, I tried to translate everything from the last major area that I supervised at San Diego Zoo, large carnivores and ungulates. And it didn't take me long to realize that the zoo really embraced the intimacy that I had experienced at the children's zoo, where one-on-one contact with the public was not just possible, but it was unavoidable. And that meant that you had all these opportunities to create epiphanies. One of the things that's most endearing to me about this zoo is our opportunity to promote a message of change and stewardship. When I was at San Diego Zoo, I went to Indonesia. Coming back and talking to people about conservation messaging, especially with climate change, when they're in t-shirts and shorts, is really difficult to make. But when you have people who come to the mountain, who want to enjoy the mountain, it's very easy to give a message of stewardship, saying that everything we do has a positive or a negative impact on wildlife and wild places, and there is no in between. If you want this mountain to be here for your children and their children, you have to participate by being an agent for change. I'd rather people leave the zoo questioning their commitment to conversation than walking away going, thank God you guys are here. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Because the good work that we do, we can't do it alone. And we rely on people to help us out by being stewards of the mountain and stewards of nature. We have approximately 17 people that work here at the zoo, and all the work that we do in rehab and rescue is finite. We have a limited number of hours, limited number of staff, but we have 150,000 people who come to the zoo every year. And imagine if 10% of those people changed the way they view nature, it would be an incredible thing.
For those who work at the Big Bear Alpine Zoo, their message of the importance of stewardship is one that is very important, especially when it comes to animals that have been negatively impacted by human interaction.
Everything we do has a positive or negative impact. And so when you build a road, you divide a forest. When you build a house, you uproot trees. When you drive a car, you create pollution. So we're resource hogs as humans. And yet we share resources with Mother Nature and the animals. The zoo is a great place for us to remind people that when humans come in contact with Mother Nature, there is no janitorial service. So when you get ready to leave on Monday morning or Sunday night, take your trash out with you. Don't just leave it out on the curb, because pickup won't be till Thursday. If you do that for 4 days, leave your trash out, chances are coyotes, raccoons, or rodents will get into it, and it will create an opportunity for a negative confrontation or a negative impact.
Once they are rescued and imprinted, these animals cannot be released back into the wild.
So if they can't, I want to be part of their care, and I want to be part of the people who really want to give them a high quality of care as long as they're going to be in captivity.
Wild animals are best when they're kept wild. And if you acclimate an animal to human presence, they end up here. And we have several animals that, because they were hand raised by humans, they become imprinted. When they become imprinted, they lose their fear. And when that happens, then they get bolder and bolder and bolder, because in many cases the motivation is food. So if you feed raccoons on your deck, or you put cat food on your deck for stray cats, skunks or raccoons will definitely lose their sense of fear, and then the next thing you know, you have a raccoon or a skunk problem. Definitely they end up losing in that case. We have a lot of different animals here that have been impacted by humans in one form or another. Nature has a good way of balancing everything, and then we screw it up when we get involved.
The Big Bear Alpine Zoo hosts many animals with incredible stories.
Every animal has a unique story. Our grizzly bears were dumpster divers in Yellowstone, and they were 3 strikes offenders. They certainly were facing a untimely death by authorities, because the last thing you want is to have a bear be comfortable coming into human areas. And that's when you're going to really find a lot of trouble.
I mean, the bears are pretty hard to beat. They're so smart. For example, targeting, getting them to touch the end of a target stick. All 3 black bears that I work with figured it out pretty much on the first day, within the first 20, 30 minutes. Versus the coyotes that I've been working with for the better part of a couple of years, still are pretty hit and miss with that target. Much more skittish, much more reluctant towards me specifically. There's other keepers where they don't feel as maybe intimidated by I'm the only male keeper here, so I'm woefully outnumbered. But some of the animals will react differently to different individuals. I'd say, yeah, probably black bears are some of the ones that I'm closest with. And then maybe Bonsai the coyote. It's pretty cool too, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite stories is Baby the bobcat. And she came to us as a 10-week-old bobcat whose mother had left her while she had carted off with her sibling during a time when folks out in Temecula were doing some fire clearing. The guys that were doing the fire clearing ended up leaving her there for 24 hours, hoping that the mom would come back. When the mom didn't come back, they rescued her. They took her to a nearby shelter. They contacted us. And I had just started. And when I was at San Diego Zoo, I ran the children's zoo, which part of that was the nursery. And we had learned a few years earlier that having interactions with neonates tended to promote bonding and imprinting. And so we were trying to move away from that. And we have this whole scientific method of doing hand rearing with a lot of different mammals that we have at San Diego Zoo. And so when Baby was brought to us, we did everything by the book. And I was really excited because here is my opportunity to take the stuff I'd learned and applied it in a scientific way. We had a camouflaged fleece blanket. We had a hole put in it and the nipple of the bottle placed. And so she wouldn't see us. She would just see the blanket. She'd come up and knead on the blanket and suckle off the bottle. Everything worked well until we weaned her. When we got her on solid food, she figured it out really quickly, started pacing and purring and getting really excited to see us. And we realized that we had never been able to avoid that imprinting. And so we had to make a very hard decision. We could not release her back in the wild because an imprinted animal is not afraid. So if you're sitting at the table eating your bucket of Kentucky chicken at the park, she'd jump on that table and challenge you for it. Whereas a normal bobcat would wait until you left, then look around for scraps and try and avoid contact with you whatsoever. So that fear factor is really, really important. The other thing with Baby was we didn't want to put her back out in the wild if she was dependent on humans. So we kept her as an ambassador. And then later on we learned, because we got 2 more baby bobcats in, I went back to my roots at San Diego and we applied the same thing before. We kept Baby. We placed the 2 young bobcats in a cage next to her. They had visual contact with each other. We were the bad guys. And so every time we would go in to feed or clean, we made sure that we were viewed as the bad guys. They focused on Baby. So serendipitously, what we thought was a failure with Baby turned out to be a success story with these 2 bobcats. And then I found out that we actually had never released bobcats from young neonates to adulthood. And this was the first time that we were able to do it successfully. And so we did it because of the failure that we had with Baby turned into a success with 2 wild bobcats. One of my favorite stories. We used to do a feeding tour years ago, and we don't do that anymore, primarily because I felt that all staff should give keeper presentations and talk about animal behavior, provide enrichment, and then interpret the enrichment and their response to enrichment. Being able to talk about animals' natural behavior is something that we're primarily charged with. It's what we're supposed to do in order to introduce our guests to these amazing animals. So when we do enrichment for an animal, enrichment is based on the ability to elicit specific natural behaviors. What a great place to talk about it during an enrichment activity, to have all these people standing in front and saying, can you see what the animal is doing right now? This is part of what they normally would do in the wild. And so what we do is we make that strong connection, and we eliminated those walking tours because they didn't really focus on that. So we have 4 presentations every day at noon, 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. And our goal is to give 30 minutes of our time to our guests to tell them about the uniqueness of the species, uniqueness of the habitat, the individual story of the animal, because that's important too.
I'm Crystal. These are flying squirrels. They're probably something you don't see a lot here at our zoo, and that's because these guys are strictly nocturnal. They're actually one of the few rodents that are truly nocturnal. And one of the ways you can tell nocturnal animals, they have these big black eyes, and that's because they want to be able to gather as much light into their eye as possible so they can see better at night. They are known for flying, that's in their name. However, they're not actually true flyers, they're actually gliders. And when they stretch out their arms and legs, you'll see it actually make a really nice flat piece of skin there. That is used when you're in a tree. You can run off a branch and jump off, and they'll stick their arms and legs out in a big X pattern. Kind of like you actually see some skydivers in wingsuits do. They steal that idea from nature. They can go up to 300 feet in one glide, which is pretty long. It is subject to the wind and other factors, but they can use this really cool flat tail here. Can you see this tail? This is actually used like a rudder to help maneuver them around. So they can actually go left, right, or they can, if they decide they want to land on another tree nearby, they can actually aim for that tree and use the tail to slow them down as they land on the tree, which is really cool. And their names are Truffles, Lichen, and Juniper. I'm gonna guess the one jumping on me is Juniper. She's pretty friendly.
Well, you know, as a keeper, and if you've been doing this for a lot of years, you know, when you start out, almost every keeper I know, myself included, start out with that whole thing of, I only want to work with this kind of animal. I only want to work with this kind of animal. And then you start working with a bunch of different animals, and you find something fascinating about each and every one of them, so that you no longer are like, I will only work with this type of animal. Again, when I started at elephants, I thought, oh, I just want to work with elephants for the rest of my life. Started working with large cats. I only want to work with large cats for the rest of my life. But the more animals I worked with, I had a favorite thing about each and every one. Same thing here. It's, you know, I go and say hi to all my animals in the morning, make sure everybody's okay. And I spend time with each and every one, and you have a little relationship with each and every one, and a little bond with each and every one of them. And it's unique, just like it would be with your dog or your cat. You have a unique relationship with everyone. So it's hard for me to say I have a favorite, because I feel like I would betraying another animal if I said, well, I just love the snow leopards, because then I go and see the bears. It's like, oh no, I love you guys, you know?
Some of the animals brought into the Big Bear Alpine Zoo were raised by people as pets, which creates its own unique set of problems.
One of our deer that we have, mule deer, was kept as a pet. It was assumed that our Arctic fox was a pet because she was found running on the roof of somebody's house. We've had various birds, ravens, that have been hand-raised by people. We have a raccoon that was hand-raised by somebody and kept as a pet until it got to be about 2 years old and realized that it was not exactly the friendly animal that they thought it was going to be. Babies are cute, but babies grow into wild animals. And even an animal that is handled and imprinted still has wild instincts and can be extremely dangerous. When we kept Baby, we leash trained her and used her as an ambassador. So it was great. We had a bobcat that we could bring out on a leash and talk about all of these natural behaviors. But at some point, it became apparent that she was still a wild cat, and I never wanted to take any kind of chance with that with her. And so we don't go in with her. We shift her, and we trained her to move from one side of the cage to another in a safe place. But we respect the wild nature of the animals that we have here, even those that have been hand-raised by humans. In fact, they generally make the most dangerous animals because they aren't afraid, generally elicit very unusual or unnatural behaviors.
There's a lot of challenges that animals have out in the wild, not just with our interference, but with each other. It's not a Disney movie out there. It could be very brutal. And I try to share that with people in the most gentlest way so they understand, you know, when you see something being killed and eaten, it's not malice, it's survival, unlike us.
Huckleberry is a black bear, North American black bear. Black bears are not a native species to this area. At one time we had grizzlies, the California grizzly bear, and 100 years ago the last one was hunted and killed in California. And in the 1930s, Fish and Game decided that they would take some black bears from Yosemite and translocate them here into certain parts of Southern California to help fill the niche that was left behind by the extinct grizzly bear. And unfortunately, they're a very different species. Grizzlies are diurnal, which means that they're active during the day. And so are black bears, except when in the presence of brown bears and humans, then they become more nocturnal. So they adapt differently to different kinds of circumstances. So we don't have the same type of population that was here 100 years ago. Black bears were not a natural species. Huckleberry was about 6 months old when he was hit by a car, and his broken leg became gangrenous, and so they had to amputate it. So Huckleberry's story is just a reminder of how we sometimes goof up when we try and do something good. We remind our folks that come here, the guests, that when you walk away, we want you to know about black bears and not about Huckleberry. Huckleberry's story is really important, but we have 4 black bears here at the zoo, and they're all safe. None of them need to be saved. But we have 400 on the mountain and 40,000 in the state, and they need to be saved. They are not safe. And so Huckleberry's story is a reminder of what happens when man meets animal, and it generally, for the most part, does not end well for animals.
We all have to live in this world together. Animals are a really important part of the world. If you remove one species, you're going to have a domino effect, and it all affects us too. So everybody should care. And I just want to be part of that education process that teaches people that we're all important. Everyone has a job, and down to the littlest aphid, every animal has a job to do and is important to the whole environment and our well-being as well. You know, just to say you love animals, that's just the basic, that's the baseline. That's like being a cook or a chef because you like to eat. You know, we all like to eat. We all love animals.
The mountain lions came to us as cubs. Their mother was shot by a rancher, and at some point somebody realized that she was lactating, which meant that she had cubs out. And so they set out some have-a-hearts, which are live traps, and they were able to trap the cubs. The cubs were brought here and were unreleasable, and so they became part of the zoo's ambassador program. And that's one of the things, you know, when I first got here, that exhibit was barren. There was a doghouse, an igloo, and a spool. They were never active in front of the public, primarily because they were obese. But now you can see there are a lot of climbing structures in there. They have a platform out in the front. You know, a natural behavior of a mountain lion is they're a predator. In fact, they're an ambush predator. So they like to be up high. They like to be seen but not seen. You know, these are really important welfare things for an ambush predator. So when we redesigned that exhibit, we kept all these things in mind, and it proved to be a very successful move for us.
At LA Zoo, it was pretty much in a sea of keepers, and even though we had kind of a community of keepers, culturally, I felt a little more, I don't want to say disenfranchised is not a good word, but just like I didn't have as much of a voice. Here, I feel like I have a little more of a voice here, and it is because we are a smaller zoo. So there's a lot more responsibility placed on each one of us, whereas there's a lot more chiefs over at LA Zoo. But 2 great institutions, no matter what.
Holly Bear. I mean, we're definitely encouraged to develop relationships with all our animals. The closer we are to the animals that we care for, the better we know the animals we care for, the better care we can provide to them, the more likely we're going to notice subtle changes in either their attitude, their appetite, or what's coming out the other end.
The Big Bear Alpine Zoo is preparing to move. The zoo has outgrown its current facility, which is on a steep slope that makes it hard for zoo caretakers and the public to navigate. The new zoo will be on a 5.6 acre lot of a 10.4 acre property owned by the district.
The advantages of moving, of course, are we get to go to a larger location, more modern hardware, if you will, which provides a lot better opportunities for training and enrichment, for guest interaction, a lot more open space. The part I would miss most is the intimacy of a small environment here. All of the trees that we have. We'll have over 200 trees at the new zoo. It'll take a little while for them to grow. Nothing like this, but these cages are what they are, and they're not going to get any bigger. We're pretty well landlocked, and so the new zoo provides an opportunity for a lot of growth. The other thing too is this zoo over the last 60 years has been kind of a stream of consciousness and exhibit design and plan. The new zoo facility is well thought out and well planned. Ideally, its goal is to promote a guest experience that connects people to wildlife. And that's our job, and that's our role in zoos today. And hopefully the zoo will be more involved in conservation efforts on a scientific basis.
Better facilities, better, more standardized facilities for the animals and for the keepers. That's going to be really good for interaction. There's going to be a lot better behind the scenes facilities that people won't be able to see, but it'll be really good for the animals, but we'll be able to house them and shift them around and separate them as we need to for examinations or for behavioral issues or for whatever. Back here, we're very, very limited as to what we can do, and they've done an incredible job for like 60 years managing the animals here, but it has been a challenge. And now it's going to be a little more keeper friendly, that we'll be able to do our jobs better and protect the animals better and examine them better and have better facilities to bring them into when we do need to examine them or do any kind of workup or whatever it is that they need. For the public, it's going to be better because it's going to be flat instead of treacherously steep as it is here. And when it snows and it's icy, it's pretty challenging for people to move around without slipping and falling, as it is for us. Structurally, everything's going to be a lot nicer and a lot more user-friendly for everybody, the public and for the employees. And the animals are going to have really nice, clean, new exhibits, so it'll be good for them. And people ask me all the time, are these animals going to be freaked out when they move? And you have to remember, animals in the wild, they're constantly moving. They're constantly moving for reasons of food or to get away from danger, or there's a fire, environmentally, there's a lot of reasons. They don't stay in the same place. Unless there's an abundance of food, they're going to keep moving. It'll be nice for them, and it'll be kind of stimulating for them too. I think it'll be very healthy and good for them to be in a new environment.
The new zoos and enclosures have been taking shape over the past few months. This zoo will feature more modern holding areas and safety features, including dig barriers around the zoo perimeter and enclosures. The new zoo will also offer expanded educational opportunities. The enclosures will have features that allow animals to show off their natural behavior, giving zoo employees more teachable moments.
What makes us an alpine zoo? We do a lot of good things here at the zoo, and as I said earlier, the good that we do, we can't do alone, and so we rely on partnerships.
This zoo was a much more intimate experience. Number one, we could get physically that much closer to a lot of the animals that were on exhibit, and therefore I felt like I could make those connections easier by just that physical proximity to them really seemed to help. I could also see how much the people that worked here loved what they did and loved the animals, and you could see how that love translated to the type of care that they were receiving here. I've not since been back to the LA Zoo since I was hired here, but I have been back to several other zoos. It's a completely different experience now. I'm sure if I went to the LA Zoo, I would not leave depressed because I have a different outlook on things. But this zoo definitely opened my eyes to, what it is that zoos really do.
For us in animal care, it really comes down to the ability to be a critical thinker and a long-time learner.
My number one goal is to connect our guests to wildlife. If I can inspire them to enjoy the wonder that is, our local wildlife, and some of them not local, like our snow leopards, aren't found anywhere near here. That's a big win for me. I love seeing small children just in amazement, looking at some of the animals that I care for. And another big thing is giving our guests sort of a call to action. We do great work here. We've saved thousands of animals' lives over the last 60 years or so, but we can't do it alone. We need our guests to help us as well. And so everything they can do to be environmentally friendly, by being eco-consumers, knowing where your products are coming from that you buy, being better stewards of our land. We're kind of like a sky forest, and we're a good sort of litmus test or barometer on how the environment is going, So when, things start going bad, up here, we know it's going to trickle down into other areas. We're at a tipping point on our Earth. We need to make a paradigm shift in how we see the world. We have limited resources on this planet that we have to share within, amongst ourselves as humans and with the wildlife as well. It's not just our planet. So everything you can do to be environmentally friendly, I'd say would be a step in the right direction.
It's a whole big ball of just wanting to take care of animals because I just respect and love nature so much and want to be part of that, and educating people who don't normally It's not in their wheelhouse, and it's not in they're not living it every day. Just so they walk away from here knowing just a little bit more and appreciating nature a little bit more and what we do a little bit more and understanding.
I never always wanted to be a zookeeper, but being close to nature was something that was always in my family. So growing up, I grew up in Virginia. Being in the woods was something we always did and we used as our playground. Later on, when I was in the first grade, we went on a field trip to the Natural History Museum at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. And when you walk into the foyer, there are these large elephants. And I was so amazed. And remember, I'm in the first grade. I looked up, I walked around, I looked up, I walked around. I stayed there while the rest of the group moved on. And it took me a better part of half the day in order to find that group. And that was the real first epiphany that I had, that there was a connection between me and animals. Even though these were not live specimens, I still understood how magnificent these beasts were.
So I moved up to Big Bear, almost 5 years to the day, not really knowing there was a zoo up here. Sort of just fell in love with this place right off the bat, knew I wanted to be a part of it.
So my aspiration from a very early age was to work with animals. Always wanted to be an animal keeper.
But I had no real professional animal background, but they encouraged me to volunteer, so that's what I did.
Somehow I detoured through the music business, did that for about 15 years, and then decided one day when the music business was over and I woke up in a fetal position that, I'm going to go for it. And I live 5 minutes from LA Zoo. So I started volunteering there.
And I volunteered for about a whole year, nearly full time. I was lucky enough to be in a position to afford to be able to do that. Learned a ton during that year. It was good timing on my part as well. I think they were a little short-staffed on keepers, and the majority of the volunteers at that point were octogenarians probably, and weren't really doing a lot of the physical labor. None of them were shoveling. So Bob put me to work.
I started at elephants there at LA Zoo and became a demand keeper there. And I was there for about 17 years, kind of semi-retired. We moved up here to Big Bear because we have a cabin up here and we like to ski. Wanted to volunteer up here, and Bob Cisneros, the curator here, pretty much talked me into just working here.
Throughout my childhood, I was always influenced by celebrities on TV, guys like Jim Fowler and Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
He saw something in me and just really fostered my development here. And after about a year of trying to just do every nasty job you could possibly think of, and some you probably don't want to think of, I was encouraged to apply for the part-time position here. They hired me 2 years ago, 2018. I was hired as a full-time keeper officially. Every day is a joy to come here. You find something you love to do. It doesn't feel like work. Even though it is a ton of work, it's a dream come true. It's a dream job.
Zoos have changed a lot over the last few decades. For the better, of course. There are many reasons that zoos have opened throughout the world. Recreation, education, research, rescues, and sanctuaries. Petting zoos and specialized zoos. Some zoos were open for science, access to nature. Zoos like the Big Bear Alpine Zoo give the animals big and wide enclosures that have places to rest, to play, to hide in. The enclosures here are made to match the habitats the animals come from. The zookeepers hide the animals' food so the animals can practice their hunting skills and don't get bored easily. They keep the animals busy by giving them enrichment activities throughout the day, such as hiding the food or giving them things to find.
And then sadly, I'm leaving. So I am now, after 5 years, going to a large facility in state of Utah. It's an AZA facility. And there I will be the curator of carnivores, large carnivores and ungulates. Very close to home, Asian and African species, all the things I took care of when I was at San Diego Zoo. When I leave here, I leave knowing that my staff are fully trained. We just recently acquired digital radiography, which is a huge thing for this zoo. We're now completely independent in our ability to care for animals.
Welcome to the Big Bear Alpine Zoo. My name is Dar Lourizade, and I'm here to give you guys a special animal presentation on our snow leopards that we have here. They just got finished eating the majority of their diet in their indoor area, or what we call their bedrooms, and now I'm about to release them out onto exhibit. This is the first time we're doing this while the zoo is closed to the public. We want to bring our life at the zoo into your guys' homes. So here come the cats. First one out is going to be Shanti. So as you can see, things don't always go according to plan as zookeepers, but we have to get creative sometimes and to motivate our animals to come out sometimes. So we'll see if I can work my magic on her. Shanti! There we go. Okay, so sometimes we have to wait it out for our cats to come on out. But as you can see, Shanti has exited her bedroom. As soon as Shanti gets a certain distance away from the entry, that's when I will release her sister out of her bedroom. And so she seems to be far enough away, and I will go ahead and do that. So there we have Asha. Asha just exited. Now they are both out on exhibit. So let me give you a brief intro on the cats that we have here. They are 7.5-year-old sisters from the same litter. Their names are Asha and Shanti. Asha and Shanti were originally born in the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle. So they were born in captivity. That facility has a very successful snow leopard breeding program. And so in order to free up space at that facility, these cats came to the Big Bear Alpine Zoo about 5 years ago to live out their lives, essentially. We were chosen specifically as a facility for them because of our alpine elevation. We're at about 7,000 feet above sea level, definitely within their elevation range. They tend to do really well up here, especially during the winter time and late fall and early spring when the weather is cooler. We tend to get sub-freezing temperatures for about 6 to 7 months out of the year up here. We tend to get a good amount of snow as well. This last winter that we recently just went through, we got easily well over 12 feet of snow at this elevation. So definitely an ideal environment for them up here. Flip side of that is during the dog days of summer, like July, August, September, these cats are not going to be very active. Just imagine wearing a really, really heavy duty fur coat on a really warm day. You're not going to want to do a whole lot. So on those warm days, they tend to remain inside quite a bit because it's going to be cooler in there. Once it reaches a certain temperature up here, then we can use the misting system in this enclosure. That misting system drops the ambient temperature by several degrees in here, making it more comfortable for these cats. So that's essentially how we acquired them. So snow leopards, really incredible animals. They have a lifespan in the wild of about 8 to 10 years if they're lucky. It is a rough life out there. Under managed care inside of a zoo, they're going to double their lifespan. So about 16 to 20 years in captivity. For a variety of reasons are they going to extend their lives in captivity. Number one, they're going to get fed consistently. Number two, there is nobody hunting them in here. Number three, they're going to get medical treatment when and if they need that. I believe the oldest snow leopard on record in captivity was 26 years old. So that's a pretty old cat. Tibet, Nepal, India, China actually has the largest population of snow leopards, but they can also be found in Mongolia, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, so that whole part of the world. And they tend to live at elevations above 5,000 feet. And they can survive from 5,000 feet all the way up to 20,000 feet above sea level, which is pretty high up there. But in order to be able to survive at those extreme elevations and hence those extreme temperatures, they need to be well equipped anatomically. So number one, check out that coat. That fur that they have is incredibly well insulated. It allows them to maintain their body temperature under extreme conditions. Also the coloration on the coat, the grays, the whites, the tans, mixed together with the pattern of rosettes, those are not called spots, those are called rosettes, allow these cats to blend in incredibly well in their environment. Even in this enclosure, sometimes they could be sitting right on top of that rock that's jutting into the pool, and depending on the time of day, the way the sunlight's playing through the trees, I could be staring right at that rock and not even notice the 1 or 2 cats that are laying on top of it. That's how well they melt into their background. But those beautiful coats that you guys are looking at right now, that is also one of the main reasons why there's so few of them left. Human beings have been hunting and persecuting these beautiful creatures out of a personal desire for their fur or for the fur trade. It's a pretty terrible thing to do to these cats. I'm just going to say let the snow leopards keep their fur. It looks a whole lot better on them than on anybody else. Another part of their body that helps them to survive and thrive are their tails. I don't know if you guys noticed how massive those tails are. Those are just about the longest and biggest tail on any cat. And those tails serve many different functions. Number one, it's going to provide them with excellent balance. A lot of the terrain that they're most active on, hunting on, moving about on, are going to be these steep, rocky, cliff-type situations where they're going to need excellent footing and excellent balance just to literally stay on the mountain. Those tails provide them with that balance and allow them to navigate what would otherwise be unnavigatable terrain. Those tails also serve as a fat storage. So during the winter months when food sources are scarce, they can rely upon the fat that's stored in their tail to get them through a slow period as far as prey is concerned. Those tails also help them to keep warm. So if it is an especially cold day or night and their coats aren't keeping them warm enough, they will actually take their tails and wrap it around themselves, almost like a shawl or a scarf. To maintain even more of their body temperature. Finally, and this is probably the coolest thing about their tail, is that those tails help them to breathe easier. I know a lot of you are thinking, wow, that sounds really strange. But just imagine you're living at 18 to 20,000 feet above sea level. The air and the oxygen at that altitude is going to be incredibly cold. It's going to be uncomfortable, if not painful, to breathe that directly into your lungs. So these cats have figured out that if those conditions arise, they will actually take their tails, whip them around, and put them in their mouth. And then clamp down on the tail lightly with their teeth, and then breathe the oxygen over the fine hairs that are on that tail. That acts like a filter, thereby warming up the air before it hits their lungs, making it more comfortable for them to breathe. I think that's pretty remarkable that they figured that out. So as you can see, tails incredibly important to these cats. Another part of their body that helps them to survive and thrive are their paws. I don't know if you guys noticed how massive those paws are. That is not accidental. So these cats have these big wide paws so that they can navigate winter type climates and weather. So those big wide paws act as homegrown snowshoes. So because of those wide paws, they can it allows them to displace their weight over a greater area, meaning that when there's snow on the ground, they're not going to sink that much in the snow. They're going to be able to walk or run on top of that snow. Whereas the prey they most commonly hunt are going to be animals with hooves. As you can imagine, animals with hooves don't do well in the snow. They're going to sink in the snow, making them much less mobile and agile in comparison to these cats. So big time competitive advantage they have. So as you can see, the heavily insulated coat, the super long tail, the big wide paws really allows these cats to not only survive, but thrive in what is probably one of the most unforgiving parts of planet Earth. That Himalayan plateau is incredibly hard to survive up there. Somehow these cats have figured out a way to do it, and I think it's pretty remarkable.
So, even without Bob, the Big Bear Alpine Zoo will go on. The old facility is still open, and the new facility hopes to open by the end of 2020.